we can use visual representations for fractions, and what that means is that we use a shape and we divide that shape up into equal parts. The important thing is they have to be equal sizes, and then we can represent a fraction by shading in parts of that shape. So if we were to look at, for example, this one here, you can see I've got a square. It's been divided into 4 equal triangles, and out of those 4 equal triangles, one of those pieces is shaded. So we would write that as a fraction as 1 over 4. Now the 1 is what we call our numerator, and the 4 is our denominator. And the denominator is how many parts you've cut your shape into. So you can see 4 parts here. You can see here we've cut this shape into 4 parts as well. So the 4 is the denominator, and 2 of those parts are shaded. Now you could also think about this as being, if you wanted to, only 2 parts. So let's think if we made some cuts like this. So we only had really 2 parts, 2 big triangles. This would be the same as 1 shaded part out of 2 parts, if we just looked at those as 2 big triangles. And this shows you something called equivalent fractions. Now equivalent fractions are fractions that are the same. So we know here that 2 quarters is the same as 1/2. These fractions here, you can see again you've got 4 parts, that's our denominator. 1 part is shaded, and that's actually the same as the first one we looked at. Even though they look different, you've got rectangles and triangles, they still represent the same fraction, 1 out of 4. This one, 4 parts, but 4 parts are shaded, 4 out of 4, or if you wanted to, you could call that 1 whole because you've shaded the whole thing. These particular fractions here are what we call proper fractions, and I'll just write that up here. Proper fractions have a numerator that is smaller than the denominator, which is bigger. That's what a proper fraction is. Now if we look over here, I've got a couple of other examples. These ones up here are all similar, they're all cut out of 4 pieces. That doesn't have to be the case. This one here you can see is 9 pieces. 3 of those pieces have been cut or shaded, so 3 out of 9. And here you've got 6 pieces have been shaded out of 9 pieces altogether. Okay. Here you can also see the pieces that you shade don't need to all be next to each other. You could shade them anywhere. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces. So that's our denominator, 8. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those pieces shaded. So 5 out of 8 pieces. These last 2 that we're looking at here, these are what are called improper fractions or mixed numbers. I'm going to write them both ways, but the idea with these is that you're actually looking at fractions that are more than 1 whole. So if we look at this first one, can you see we've cut the pieces all into equal sizes, they're quarters, so the denominator will be 4, and you've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those pieces shaded. This is what we call an improper fraction. And an improper fraction has on the top numerator a bigger number than the denominator, which is actually smaller. So that's what we call an improper fraction. If we look at this one underneath, you can see that this has been cut into 5 pieces, each circle. So we've got 5 pieces, and that would be our denominator. And you can see the shaded pieces, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 pieces have been shaded. So that's our improper fraction. Now we can also think about these written as what's called a mixed number. And I'll just do this, I'll do this in blue. A mixed number has 2 parts. It has a whole number part and a fraction part. So if we look at this, 12 fifths could also be written as 1, 2 wholes. So 2 wholes if we thought of these as pizzas. So 2 whole pizzas. And here, this is cut into fifths. So that's our denominator. And there's 2 pieces shaded. So we could also write this fraction as a mixed number, 2 wholes and 2 fifths. So that's what the mixed number would be. What would the mixed number be here for the squares and yellow shaded parts? We've got how many wholes? We've got 1 whole that's been shaded. And here we have quarters, so that's our denominator, but we have 3 of those quarters shaded. So as a mixed number, this would be 1 whole and 3 quarters that have been shaded, or as an improper fraction, 7 quarters have been shaded. Finally, if you want to compare fractions that are equivalent, you can use what's called a fraction wall. So you can see here in this example we had 2/4. There's 2/4 there, 1/4, 2/4. If you look up, you can see that the size of the 2/4 bar is actually the same as the 1/2 bar, and that's why we had 2/4 equals a half. You could look further down and see that a half is the same as 1, 2, 3/6. So you could also have written this as 3/6. So there's lots of different ways to write equivalent fractions, and you'll look at that later on in one of the later sections.